Hey everyone, before I get on to the main purpose of this podcast today, I wanted to give you guys an update on the refurbishment of my television set. So, several years ago, I bought a Fire TV, 55-inch, and it sat for a while before I actually put it up for other reasons. But the thing is, it has gotten slower and slower. It's run out of space in the cache. So sometimes when I do playbacks like from my Jellyfin server, it doesn't have enough space to put what it needs. So it'll get choppy. And I thought, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And I don't really want to go out and buy a new TV. This is not that old a TV. It works perfectly well. It's just the operating system on it that's a problem and the processing. So I went and bought a mini PC. It's been driving it beautifully. I've got the apps installed on the PC. It's running Windows 11. Everything installed on it just fine. I've got apps for Netflix and Jellyfin, those kinds of things, so I can watch all the video on it. That's all I'm running the mini PC for. It drives the monitor. Now, the downside is I have to boot the Fire TV before I can get to set the HDMI to the one that I want so I can use it as a monitor. And this TV has 3 HDMI ins on it. So it's a good TV, but adding that mini PC to it means that I'll have a good TV for that much longer, right? I don't have to worry about buying a new TV. I don't have to worry about the waste of this TV. And even the mini PC that I got is a refurb. So less electronic waste, and I've got a TV and I've extended its life. Got a Bluetooth keyboard, which is the purpose of this follow-up. Bluetooth keyboard has a touchpad on the side. I can use it on my phones if I want to. I can use it on the TV. The PC has a little dongle on it to read the keyboard, and it Bluetooths to my phones if I wanted to use it on the phones. It's basically a giant remote, right? I can move things around. I can type in passwords. I can type something into search as opposed to using like the TV remote and having to move around from letter to letter and click. I can actually type things in, and I could use it on the TV as well as using it on the PC. So that's worked out perfectly fine. That's exactly what I wanted. And it was under $200. I think maybe $250 for everything, including the keyboard. And I'm set up and ready to go. Got a good long HDMI cable because I couldn't put it by the TV, but you wouldn't need to do that. If you've got a spot for your mini PC that you can mount somewhere near the TV, you can even hide it behind the TV. I've got it cabled, but it does have Wi-Fi capability. You could literally just hide it behind your TV, run a short cable from the PC to that, a power cable to the mini PC, and you're done. And you've saved yourself money on having to replace a TV that may not need to be replaced. That said, the purpose of this podcast was last year, in a way, I messed up. So if you followed my podcast last year, I was putting up a solar panel. I took 4 100-watt solar panels, hooked them together using a steel bent, punched framing. So they have an angled, punched steel frame. I used that to put around the edges of it to hold the panels together and to make a framework so that I could attach the panels to a RV designed frame. Now, what it basically was is 2 rails, one pair of rails for the panel, and the other pair of rails for what would be the roof of your RV, and 2 arms that you would then mount underneath to push the panel up. I mounted it the other way so that the panel would lay flat against the 4x4s that I had mounted it to, and I could swing it up. Now, this is where I messed up. I got everything put in place, got the 4x4s put up, and had to pull it up. Now it was going up to the second floor. So I had a block and tackle, and there wasn't an outside edge to where I was mounting to. It was over the 8-foot drop. So I was hanging on to the 4x4s and trying to level things out, and I didn't do a really great job. I was off by maybe a 1/2 inch on one side, 1/4 inch. It's just enough to be noticeable and to be a pain. So when I put up the other pair of panels, I thought, well, wait a minute. I don't want people to have to go find this frame that I used for the other mount point, because they're hard to find, and if you can find them, they can be expensive, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. So what if, when I frame the other one up, I use another pair of angled punched steel on the sides as a frame underneath, and then use a different type of mount? That's what I did. Now, this new mount does not have the capability of holding things out. I can mount something to do that. This isn't something that's built into the system that I built. What I did was I got a 3/8 inch pin that goes at the top, and I hooked it to a garage hinge. Now, if you've seen the hinges at a garage, they're set up in such a way that they hold the garage door up. So there's a wheel that goes through, right, to go into the track, and the hinge folds. So this is the hinge that would go between those door sections. So when you see a garage door open up, you'll notice there's sections, and those sections have to fold as they go up. This is the part that would go there. So I mount that directly to the 4x4. And then I use the clevis pin, the 3/8 inch clevis pin that I got, to go into the, through the opening in the garage hinge where the wheel would go, and into the framework that I put around the panel. Now I needed to make that steel a little bit wider because 3/8 was basically the size of the hole, so there's no way I was going to get the pin in there. And the clevis pin has a cotter pin on it, so that once you get it in, you can lock it into place, so it's not going to go. And it's too long. Be honest, it's 4 3/8 inches, I think it is long, which is more than I need, but it's not causing any problems being that long. But here's where I messed up. When I put that one together, it was simple and straightforward, and the hinge goes right to the edge of the 4x4, pins go in, ready to go. With the other setup, because of the way it was designed, the rails are halfway into the 4x4. Not great for doing this, because it means that while I could just mount the hinge there, I would have to cut the frame, because the frame is square at the top, and it would cut into the 4x4 otherwise. So I'd either have to cut the frame, or I'd have to make a notch into the 4x4 so that when this thing swings up to its full height, it has that extra gap. What I did instead, because again, being mounted halfway in, the hinge wouldn't mount quite right onto the 4x4. So I took 2 other pieces of 4x4, notched them so that they will be, I lose an inch. Now it's a 4x4, so it's really like 3.275, 3 3/4 inch thick. So I take a 1 inch notch out of that. So I got 2 3/4 inches of distance between the existing 4x4 and the new setup. I can mount the hinges directly to that, and I cut them in another couple of inches on the other side so that they'll lock into place on the 4x4. So from the outside, I can screw in to the 4x4 on either side, which will push it into the existing 4x4 and allow those hinges to be where they need to be for the pins to go through. Now, once the pins go in, we're all set. I will need to take the existing panel down, take the frames off of it. Now, again, I measured it to physically, putting it against where they need to go. So I know the panel's going to fit where it's supposed to go. I'm going to need to open up the holes just a little bit on the existing frame. Rather than taking the frame or the rails down right now, I'm going to leave the frame in place. Leave the rails on the panels in place. The other ones will come down eventually. But again, I was trying to get the panels up quickly last year before I could, so I could get as much solar power in, and before I built the porch, the decking that I put underneath it. Now that I've got the deck underneath, I have a workspace. So now instead of raising the panels up using a block and tackle about 15 feet, I don't have to do that this time. I only have to raise it I'm going to raise it another couple of feet, tops. So the 4x4s will go into place with the hinges attached to them. And I can level that off easier now because I've got a place to stand. The panel can be folded down and slid up into place. Much easier now because of the height. I only have to raise it 1.5 feet. Once I've got it in place, then all I have to do is push the pins in. So I've got to do at this point, all I got left to do is to drill bring the panel down, take it out so I can drill into the top parts of the rails that are on the panel, slide it up into place once I've got the 4x4s and the hinges in place, and then just push the pins in, and I'll be done. Now, what that gives me is a huge freedom of movement because that panel can go more than just horizontal. It never will need to, and that wouldn't be appropriate for what its use is. But if the sun were directly overhead, which never happens, the panel could go completely horizontal with this design. It won't have to go quite that far. It's going to be close. So if you were considering that to be 100%, to be that 90-degree swap, let's do it in degrees. So we're going up 90 degrees from being completely vertical. So I won't have to go to 90, but I may have to go to 75, right, over the summer. And this will give me freedom for it to swing any way I want to. Again, I've got actuators that are going to be doing the heavy lifting of putting the panel in place. This is a 4 100-watt panel configuration, made heavier by the fact that I used punched steel to hold everything together. Now, I could have gone aluminum, but I really didn't want to. And I could have done this hinge last year for this, but I wanted to do something off the shelf. And then when I put the other two panels in, I thought, well, why don't I just see what the experiment would be like? And that worked just fine last year. Now, could you modify this if you needed to? If you thought that the hinge is not going to be enough and you want to put a second hinge on it, you'd first have to get a bigger clevis pin because the one I've got's not long enough for it. And I'll put pictures up on the Life Hacks and Stuff website so that you guys can see what it was that I used. But you could get a longer pin and pop it all the way through, which would give you a hinge, a mount point on both sides. If you had the ability to just go out and get it made, you could just get a brace made for both sides to hook into place. Now, I like the hinge because the hinge is something you can just go buy. I got the hinge and the clevis pin from Home Depot. So it's easy for you to just go buy it off the shelf. And the hinge has that very large width to it. So that way, you've got a good mount point, and it takes the weight of the panels and spreads it across, for the most part, that entire hinge. So you're not just on one side of the hinge. You're not on this narrow thing that you've got in place to hold it in place. You have a wider piece to hang on. The hinge that it's already on the framing, has already holding the panel up. So obviously it's strong enough to hold the panel up. It's an aluminum one for the one that I purchased in the kit. The other one that I built is steel. So I don't have to worry about that fatiguing or having issues with either of those. And because it has so much freedom of movement to it, I can, if I want to, put blocks in place. So let's say I use the actuators to move them into position. Once I've got the panel in position, I could take another piece of punched steel, or to use the aluminum legs that came with the kit. Wouldn't be long enough for everything, so you might have to have multiple lengths, but you could create a mount point on the 4x4 for the bottom part, and then just move it into a different spot on the panel itself. By making a different thing in the frame, you could also put different mounting points on the 4x4 to put it in place. Again, the actuators are going to move it into place, and the actuators that I'm using are more than powerful enough to hold this thing in place, to lift it up and to hold the panel in place without issue. But if I wanted just a little bit more stability or more peace of mind, for example, we've had some pretty good winds. So if I didn't think to bring the panel down, for example, during a high wind, I could leave it up and mount these other pieces in place to give it a little bit extra stability to it, just in case, so that the actuators themselves wouldn't become damaged because they wouldn't be taking the full brunt of the movement based off of the wind. Now again, neither of these panels, the 4 is not a lightweight. The 2 is lighter, but they aren't super light, so the wind isn't that much of an issue so far. And they're tucked up against the house. Again, these panels were never mounted on a roof. They're mounted vertically on a 4x4 configuration, pair of 4x4s, and that allows them to swing up and down. At the same time, they're not on the roof. So I'm not mounting anything to my roof. This is a separate setup. And while I couldn't do it this year, I'm hoping that next year I'll be able to put the sun tracker up. Now, the sun tracker unit takes 6 panels, which I have, and there'll be 6 100-watt panels. And as the sun moves, they require power, obviously, but as the sun moves, it will track the sunlight in the sky, and it will move to match the sun. So I won't have to worry about them like I will for the other 6 panels that I've got, about going out every so often during the year and adjusting the angle of them. This should adjust itself. And it should give me better coverage in the afternoon. So one of the issues that I have, obviously, and everybody does, is as the sun moves across the sky, fixed panels want to be facing the sun. That's when they're going to get the most power. And they want the sun to be dead center. So if you were to put something over it for a shadow, it would give it you wouldn't cast a shadow other than the object itself. So in other words, the sun isn't in any angle other than straight onto the panel. In the mornings and the afternoon, the sun is going to be hitting it from the side. Right? During noon, you're going to be dead over the panel, but anytime else, it's going to be hitting it from the side. With the solar tracker, it should be adjusting for that so the sun is always hitting the panel dead on. It gives you a little bit, they claim it gives you a little bit more power. I can't see how you can't get more power, for the simple fact that you'll be able to grab it for a longer part of the day, right? You get more time of sun because depending on how the sun is impacting your panels, that angle can be pretty good, right? And if you consider a percentage loss every time the sun isn't dead center, then you're picking up all that loss that you're getting. And for me, the sun, as it goes across the sky, especially in the afternoon, in the morning, I've got trees that are on the east side. But the west side, it's not so much, and there's more sun that can come in from there, but it's pretty much down on that side. Now, during the summer, not so much, right? During the summertime, you get a lot of power in. The sun's pretty much overhead most of the day. You don't have quite the same movement. But come winter, it's a little different around here. I've got mountains on both sides. I've got trees. So the power in the winter can be limited to a certain set of hours. And right now, the power, if I look at the reports that I'm seeing from the unit, I don't get power really until like 9 o'clock in the morning, even though the sun's been up for a while. So 8, 9 o'clock, where I should be getting 6, 7, I should be getting a little power, and I'm not. Same happens on the backside. In the afternoon, I'm not getting power as long as I would normally, should something track. So we'll try to get that up next year and see how that goes. That's going up on a new deck that I'm putting in place with a whole different set of support structures in place to hold this unit in place off the ground, because it's designed to be a concrete mount underneath it. I'm going to modify that design quite a bit and see how that goes. And that's one thing I'm trying here, is to come up with ways that you could do these things at home in a way that doesn't get in the way of anything you've got going on. For me, I have deer and other animals and things, and if I mount it on the ground, I could run into problems with something running into it. But if I can elevate it, then I don't have the same issues that I would have if something's on the ground. And if you've ever seen deer get scared and just head off in a direction, you don't want anything that could possibly get in their way. But that's what I got for you guys this week, and I will talk to you all next week.